The woman walked into the dojo, carrying a sword that had tasted blood in actual combat. Bruce Lee was demonstrating Wing Chun techniques on a wooden dummy, striking the arms with precise palm strikes, while 30 students watched from their seated positions along the walls. The rhythmic sound of his hands hitting wood filled the training hall. Then the sound stopped. Everyone turned toward the entrance, where a woman in traditional hakama pants stood holding a katana in its sheath. She was around 28, her posture rigid, her expression hard. Master Yamamoto, the dojo owner, stood up quickly. This was his school, and he recognized trouble when he saw it. "Miyamoto-san," he said, his voice careful, "this is a closed demonstration. You were not invited." The woman ignored him. Her eyes were locked on Bruce. "Mr. Lee," she said in formal Japanese, "I am Miyamoto Kiko, 5th Dan in Kendo and Aikido. This sword has been in my family for 6 generations. My great-great-grandfather carried it in real battle." Bruce stepped away from the wooden dummy, wiping sweat from his face with a small towel. He waited for her to continue. "I watched your demonstration," Kiko said. "You hit wooden equipment and compliant partners. You show techniques that look impressive, but mean nothing against a real weapon wielded by someone who knows how to use it." The students shifted uncomfortably. This was a direct insult, delivered publicly in a way that demanded response. Master Yamamoto moved between them. "Miyamoto-san, you will leave my dojo immediately. This is disrespectful to my guest and to this school." Kiko's hand moved to the sword handle. Not threatening, just resting there. "I'm offering Mr. Lee an opportunity to prove his methods work. If he truly believes his techniques are practical, he should be willing to demonstrate them against a real blade." Bruce handed the towel to one of the students. He looked at Kiko with calm eyes, studying her stance, her grip, the way she held herself. "You want to test your sword against my empty hands?" Bruce said in careful Japanese. "Yes, with a live blade, sharp and real. Yes, you understand that someone could be seriously hurt, you or me." Kiko's expression didn't change. "I understand. Do you?" Bruce was quiet for 5 seconds. Every person in the dojo held their breath. "I accept," Bruce said, "but we set conditions. 3 minutes maximum. You use your real blade with genuine intent. If I can't disarm you or force you to submit in that time, I admit you've made your point. If I succeed, you acknowledge that effective technique works regardless of style or weapon." Kiko nodded once. "Agreed." Master Yamamoto grabbed Bruce's arm. "This is insane. That blade can cut through bone. One mistake, and you lose a hand, an arm, or your life. Please reconsider." Bruce placed his hand on the older man's shoulder. "This is exactly what martial arts should be tested against. Real resistance, real danger. If my techniques don't work here, they don't work anywhere." Kiko walked to where she had set her sword near the entrance. She lifted it with both hands, the movement ceremonial, practiced 10,000 times. She drew the blade slowly from its sheath. The sound of steel sliding against wood was the only noise in the dojo. The katana caught the overhead lights, 3 feet of folded steel, with a wavy pattern along the edge that marked traditional Japanese forging methods. Several students gasped. They recognized a shinken, a real combat sword, not a practice weapon. Kiko held the blade horizontal at eye level, examining it, then lowered it to a ready position. She turned to face Bruce. "This sword has cut through bamboo, tatami mats, and in my great-great-grandfather's hands, through armor and flesh. I train 6 hours every day. I have never been defeated in a kendo match." "You are making a serious mistake, Mr. Lee." Bruce removed his shoes, following proper dojo etiquette. He stood barefoot on the polished wooden floor, wearing only loose black pants and no shirt. The students moved to the walls, creating maximum space in the center of the training area. Everyone wanted to watch, but nobody wanted to be close enough to get accidentally hit by that blade. Bruce took a position at one end of the open space. He rolled his shoulders, took 3 slow breaths, and settled into a relaxed stance. His hands were open, relaxed at chest height. His weight was evenly distributed. Kiko positioned herself at the opposite end, about 15 feet away. She held the sword in Shodan no Kamae, the traditional middle guard position with the blade angled toward Bruce's throat. Master Yamamoto stood to the side, clearly unhappy with this entire situation, but recognizing he couldn't stop it now. He looked at both participants. This ends at first blood, at submission, or at 3 minutes, he said. If either person is in serious danger, I will stop the match, regardless of the agreement. Understood? Both nodded. Hajime, Master Yamamoto said. Begin. Kiko moved forward immediately. Her steps were smooth, controlled, closing the distance between them with the precision of someone who had spent 20 years training footwork. She held the blade steady, the point aimed directly at Bruce's eyes. The position was both psychological and practical. It threatened his vision while keeping the sword ready to strike or defend. Bruce moved laterally, circling, maintaining distance. He was studying her, watching how she stepped, how her weight shifted, how her hands gripped the sword handle. Kiko struck without warning. A vertical cut aimed at the top of Bruce's head. The blade descended in a perfect arc, the kind of cut that would split a training mat cleanly in half. Bruce moved his head 4 inches to the left and stepped forward toward Kiko instead of backward. Every instinct screams to retreat from a blade. Bruce violated that instinct deliberately. The katana passed through the space where his head had been a fraction of a second earlier, and his forward movement placed him inside the sword's effective range, too close for the blade to generate cutting power. His right hand shot out, a Wing Chun deflection that struck Kiko's forward wrist. As the sword completed its downward path, the impact pushed the blade further offline. His left hand grabbed her right elbow, controlling the joint, preventing her from immediately recovering for another cut. Kiko reacted instantly. She rotated her body, breaking free from his grip through pure technical skill. She created distance again, resetting to neutral position. But Bruce had learned what he needed to know. Her strength level, her balance, her reaction speed. The students watching were completely silent. They had just seen a sword cut that should have killed a man miss by inches because he moved toward the danger instead of away from it. Kiko adjusted her assessment. This was not going to be simple. Kiko attacked again. This time a thrust aimed at Bruce's solar plexus. Faster than the vertical cut, harder to defend against. Bruce's hands moved in a double deflection, redirecting the thrust past his body while closing distance again. But Kiko had anticipated this. She converted the failed thrust into a horizontal slash, cutting across Bruce's path with enough force to sever ribs. What happened next made 3 students in the front row flinch backward involuntarily. Bruce dropped his entire body 6 inches by compressing his legs. The blade passed over his shoulder so close that students later swore they could see his hair move in its wake. As Kiko's momentum carried the sword past its target, Bruce's right leg swept her front foot, a Wing Chun sweep, executed at the exact moment when her weight was most committed to the cut. Kiko stumbled, but maintained her grip on the sword. She spun on her back foot to face Bruce again, breathing harder now. She had delivered 2 cuts that should have connected. Both had missed. Not because they were poorly executed, because Bruce's timing was perfect. 1 minute had passed. The next exchange happened faster than most people could process. Kiko feinted a high cut, then dropped into a low slicing attack aimed at Bruce's extended arm, a technique designed to cut tendons and disable his ability to defend. Bruce recognized the feint. He didn't commit to defending the high attack. When the real cut came at his arm, he struck Kiko's hands instead of avoiding the blade. A finger strike that hit pressure points on the back of her hands. The impact disrupted her grip strength for just a fraction of a second. The katana wavered in her hands. Bruce's other hand wrapped around her right wrist. His body rotated, using leverage instead of strength. Suddenly, Kiko found herself being pulled forward by her own committed force. She had 2 choices. release the sword or fall. Her pride wouldn't let her release her family's blade voluntarily. She fell. Bruce controlled the fall precisely, guiding Kiko down so she landed safely, but firmly face down on the wooden floor. He was behind her, maintaining control of her right wrist and the sword hand. He applied a joint lock that made it mechanically impossible for her to move the blade or maintain her grip. Pain shot through Kiko's wrist. Her hand opened reflexively. The katana clattered to the floor. Bruce immediately released the lock and stepped back. The entire match had lasted 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Master Yamamoto stood with his hand halfway raised, frozen in the process of stopping the match, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. The students erupted in confused chatter. Some were shocked, some were excited. All were trying to comprehend how an unarmed man had disarmed a legitimate swordmaster without receiving a single cut. Kiko remained on the floor, staring at her empty hand, then at the katana lying 2 feet away. In 21 years of sword training, she had never been disarmed. Not once. Bruce walked to where the sword lay. He picked it up carefully with both hands, the way one should handle a katana. He carried it back to Kiko, who had risen to a sitting position. He presented the blade to her formally, with the edge facing himself, a sign of respect and non-aggression. "Miyamoto-san," Bruce said quietly, "you are an exceptional swordmaster. Your technique is precise. Your cuts were genuine. You honored our agreement to fight with real intent." Kiko took her sword, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, from the shock of defeat. "I did not defeat your art," Bruce continued. "I applied principles that work against any attack. Timing, positioning, understanding of mechanical advantage. Your traditional training is valuable and should be preserved, but all martial arts must be tested against real resistance to remain effective." Kiko returned the sword to its sheath. She performed a formal rie, a deep bow from her seated position. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear, stripped of the arrogance that had colored it earlier. "I have trained with this sword since I was 7 years old. I have defeated over 200 opponents in kendo matches. I have cut through bamboo, straw, and wooden targets. I have never been disarmed." She looked up at Bruce. "You did not use tricks. You did not get lucky. You understood something about sword combat that most unarmed fighters never comprehend." "What did I understand?" Bruce asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. "That the weapon is only effective at certain distances and angles. That controlling the hand holding the weapon is more important than avoiding the weapon itself. That commitment to a cut creates vulnerability. These are things we know in sword arts, but we assume the blade's lethality protects us from exploitation." Kiko stood, holding her sheathed sword with both hands. "I came here to prove that traditional Japanese martial arts are superior to modern foreign systems. I was wrong, not about the value of traditional training, but about assuming age makes something superior." She turned to Master Yamamoto. "I apologize for disrupting your dojo and disrespecting your guest. It was arrogant and inappropriate." Master Yamamoto nodded, accepting the apology, but still looking shaken by what he had witnessed. Kiko looked back at Bruce. "Would you be willing to teach me? Not Wing Chun necessarily, but the principles you used, the understanding of distance and timing against weapons." Bruce smiled. "I'm returning to Hong Kong tomorrow, but Master Yamamoto teaches excellent karate, and the principles are universal. Distance management, timing, understanding your opponent's commitment and balance. These exist in all effective martial arts, traditional or modern." "Then I will ask Master Yamamoto if I may study here," Kiko said. "And perhaps someday I will visit Hong Kong to continue this education." She bowed once more, deeply, then walked to the entrance. She paused at the doorway and looked back. "Mr. Lee, thank you for not holding back. If you had shown mercy or treated me gently because I am a woman, this lesson would have meant nothing. You respected me enough to fight seriously. That matters more than winning or losing." Then she was gone. The students surrounded Bruce immediately. all talking at once. How did you know when to move forward instead of back? Weren't you afraid the blade would hit you? What if she had been faster? Bruce held up his hand for silence. When the room quieted, he spoke. That demonstration was dangerous, and I don't recommend anyone attempt something similar. But it illustrated an important principle. Weapons are not magic. They extend reach and increase damage potential, but they operate under the same physical laws as everything else. He walked to the center of the dojo. A sword has optimal range. Too far and it can't reach you. Too close and it can't generate cutting power. The swordsman must commit their body weight and momentum to make effective cuts. That commitment creates brief windows of vulnerability. But what about the speed? One student asked. Her cuts were so fast. Speed only matters if your timing is wrong, Bruce said. I wasn't trying to be faster than her blade. I was reading her body mechanics. Her shoulders, hips, and hands telegraph the cut before the blade moves. By the time the sword is in motion, I've already responded to the preparation phase. Master Yamamoto finally found his voice. Lee-san, that was the most dangerous demonstration I have ever witnessed in my dojo, and also the most educational. You proved something important today, though I hope it never needs to be proven again in such a risky manner. Agreed, Bruce said. This was a unique situation that arose from a specific challenge. Martial arts training should focus on principles and controlled practice, not dangerous weapon demonstrations. That night, Master Yamamoto received a phone call from the Japanese Sword Federation. Word had spread quickly through Tokyo's martial arts community. An unarmed foreign martial artist had disarmed a legitimate kendo and aikido expert using a live blade in front of 30 witnesses. The Federation was not pleased. This kind of demonstration encourages dangerous challenges, the Federation representative said. Students will attempt to recreate what Lee-san did and will be seriously injured or killed. We request that you do not distribute any photographs, written accounts, or details of this event. Master Yamamoto understood their concern. I will ask my students to treat this as a private lesson, not a public demonstration. We appreciate your cooperation. But several students had taken notes. Not officially, just personal observations written in notebooks that night while the memory was fresh. These notes, passed between students and eventually to other schools, became the foundation for stories that circulated quietly through martial arts circles for years. Bruce Lee never discussed the match publicly. When asked about training against weapons, he would speak in general principles about distance management and timing, but he never mentioned the specific demonstration in Tokyo. Hiko Miyamoto did exactly what she said she would do. She began studying at Master Yamamoto's dojo, focusing on karate, while continuing her sword training. 3 years later, she traveled to Hong Kong and spent 2 weeks training at Bruce Lee's school, learning Wing Chun and Jeet Kune Do principles. She became one of Japan's leading advocates for cross-training between different martial arts systems. She wrote articles arguing that traditional arts must test themselves against other methodologies to remain effective, not just preserve forms and kata. Her family's sword, the blade that had failed to cut Bruce Lee despite genuine attempts, became a teaching tool. She would tell students the story privately, using it to illustrate that weapons grant advantages but don't guarantee victory. Years later, martial arts historians tried to verify the Tokyo demonstration. They found conflicting accounts, exaggerations, and denials. Some students claimed Bruce had dodged 20 sword strikes. Others said it was only 3 or 4. Some insisted the blade was never actually sharp. Others swore they saw the edge glinting under the lights. The truth was somewhere in the middle of all these stories. March 8, 1971. Shinjuku Dojo. 30 witnesses. 2 minutes and 45 seconds. A female samurai master with a live blade versus an unarmed martial artist. The demonstration proved several things simultaneously. That weapons create advantages but also limitations. That traditional training has value but must be tested against resistance. That size and strength matter less than timing and positioning. That arrogance, regardless of skill level, leads to blind spots. But most importantly, it proved that genuine martial artists can test each other seriously, with real danger involved, and still maintain respect and learn from the experience. Kiko came to the dojo intending to humiliate Bruce and prove traditional Japanese arts superior to foreign methods. She left with her sword, her pride wounded, but her understanding expanded. Bruce accepted a dangerous challenge not to prove superiority, but to demonstrate principles he genuinely believed in. He could have refused. He could have demanded a practice sword. Instead, he trusted his training and faced real steel with empty hands. The Japanese Sword Federation got what they wanted. The demonstration remained mostly unknown outside martial arts circles. No video exists. No photographs were distributed publicly. The official record shows Bruce Lee gave a Wing Chun demonstration at Master Yamamoto's dojo on March 8, 1971. Nothing about swords or challenges, but the students who were there never forgot. They told the story carefully, selectively, to students they trusted. The story spread through private conversations, written in personal training journals, shared between schools in quiet exchanges. Some details became exaggerated over time. Some became simplified. But the core remained consistent. Bruce Lee disarmed a legitimate swordmaster using timing, positioning, and understanding of weapon mechanics. He did it without getting cut, without using tricks, and without disrespecting the traditional art he was facing. Kiko Miyamoto spent the rest of her career promoting the idea that martial arts, traditional or modern, Japanese or foreign, should learn from each other rather than competing for superiority. She never fought Bruce again. Once was enough. The lesson was learned. Master Yamamoto kept the memory private for decades, finally discussing it in interviews near the end of his life. He described it as the most dangerous and most educational moment in his dojo's history. The 30 students who witnessed it went on to teach their own students. Some became masters themselves. All of them remembered the night when sword met empty hands and principles defeated steel, not because empty hands are superior to weapons, but because a true martial artist understands that every weapon, every technique, every system has limitations, and understanding those limitations is more valuable than any blade. March 8, 1971. Tokyo, Japan. A demonstration that was supposed to prove traditional superiority instead proved something more fundamental, that martial arts at their highest level transcend style and tradition and weapon and nationality. They become understanding, pure understanding of combat principles that work regardless of circumstance. That's what happened when Bruce Lee faced a samurai sword with nothing but his hands and his training. And that's why the story, despite being suppressed, never died. Because truth, once witnessed, cannot be completely buried.